क्लाउड पे करना। हाँ
बाद में अपलोड भी तो करनी है।
हाँ
बाद में अपलोड करें तो यही चीज अपलोड कर देगा।
इस पे कर लो ना, कर ले
कर दोगे
अवश्य भी बंद कर दे, वो दे दे। हेलो हेलो मैं कर लूँगा। गुड इवनिंग। गुड इवनिंग सर, क्या हाल चाल है? गुड इवनिंग। अंकित जी से बात करें क्या? आप करेंगे? और अब चाय पीने चुपके हो जाएगी ना। ठीक है। हेलो हेलो। हाँ सर, बोलिए बोलिए। हाँ गुड इवनिंग सर। सारे काम छोड़ के आ गए? हाँ, डेट बढ़ गया। सारे निपटा दिए? नहीं नहीं, तो निपटा कहाँ, अभी निपटा कल परसों में। मैं भी लगा हुआ हूँ बीच में ही जो है, एक तरफ कर दिया, मैं कहा बाद में करेंगे चलो। उससे पहले ट्विटर ने ट्वीट कर दिया ना। हाँ जी हाँ जी। ब्याज लेगा लेकिन क्या करें? ब्याज लगेगा। ब्याज किस चीज का लगेगा? हाँ हेलो। 234 का ब्याज लेगा। क्यों? अभी ITR की डेट आई ना। हाँ, अभी तो ऑडिट की डेट है ना, आज 15 तो। ITR का डेट भी बढ़ा है ना। हाँ 15 मार्च उसका ही बढ़ा दिया ना। ऑडिट वाला डेट ITR का आ गया, कंफर्म हो गया। हाँ, मैं आपको फॉरवर्ड कर दे। कर दो ना, ऐसी चीज तो कर दे करो। अब तो काम में लगे हो तो देख नहीं पाए। अरे काम में तो अभी लगवाए हम। एक मिनट रुकिए, आपको हम भेज रहे हैं। अरे ज्वाइनिंग लिंक भेजूं इसको? क्या है ज्वाइनिंग लिंक? थक गए दम से काम करते करते। हाँ अरे अंकित जी को ज्वाइनिंग लिंक भेज दो भाई। कैसे हम भेजेंगे? कैसे हम भेजेंगे? क्यों, ज्वाइनिंग लिंक है ना ये आपके पास? आईडी पासवर्ड दे दो। वो तो मेरा है। अरे आईडी पासवर्ड तो दिया हुआ है ना हमने, नहीं दिया हुआ? नहीं। ओहो 15 फरवरी हुई है। हाँ 15 फरवरी। इन्होंने वो नहीं किया होगा, फिर रजिस्ट्रेशन नहीं किया होगा ना। हाँ ज्वाइनिंग लिंक हम भेज दे रहे हैं। भेज दे। हाँ? भेज दे रहे हैं ज्वाइनिंग लिंक। भेज दो दे दो। 15 फरवरी कर दी इन्होंने। मार्च कैसे कर रहे हैं? 15 फरवरी आ रहा है, तो 15 जनवरी से 15 फरवरी करिए उसको, कल देखेंगे। वो तो कला है, मेरे को भी ये सब आता है, तो वो तैयारी करते हैं ना, तो पता था मेरे को भी बढ़ेगी वो, तो पता सबको ही है जो हो रहा है। या 15 फरवरी कौन से किया है?
15 फरवरी टैक्स ऑडिट रिपोर्ट अपलोड करने का है,
ओके,
और रिटर्न का मार्च कर दिया है।
15 मार्च।
हाँ मैडम, लॉगिन होइए, आइए।
कर दिया क्या? अंकित जी को कर दिया ये?
हाँ हाँ कर तो दिए हैं, तो बात व्हाट्सएप कर दिए हैं।
अच्छा चलो मेरे को भी कर दो वाला, मैं भी कर देता हूँ। 15 फरवरी 15 मार्च इनकम टैक्स रिटर्न किया है। हाँ हाँ, ऑडिट रिपोर्ट दिया 15 फरवरी करी है उन्होंने, एक महीने बाद तसल्ली मिलेगी ना। चलते हैं उसके घर पे करें, देख लो मर्जी है, निकल जाते हैं चालू कर, लेकिन वही बात है ना, फिर यहाँ पर वो नहीं होने डाउनलोड डाटा कल लगता है ऑडिट की जीएसटी की नहीं करी उन्होंने, उधर का रखी पहले वो वाली हमारी तो सही चली गई रिटर्न, वो तो कर रखी है। पहले उसकी कर दे, फिर रिटर्न जो भेजनी है जीएसटी की। आ गए इनके जी, आ गए, तो ये हटिए भैया वेटिंग रूम में से, आ गए हाँ, कर दिया उसने, कर दिया। चलो टेंशन फ्री कर दिया आपको वेबिनार के लिए। हेलो
जी जी
हाँ, कह रहा हूँ टेंशन फ्री कर दिया वेबिनार के लिए
जी जी।
गवर्नमेंट ने।
अंकित जी नमस्कार।
हाँ,
नमस्कार जी, नमस्कार।
गुड इवनिंग
कैसे
अंकित जी, कैसे हैं?
बहुत
गुड
बढ़िया।
इवनिंग जी, गुड इवनिंग जी, गुड इवनिंग। विशाल जी का फोन भी आ रहा था आज,
जी
मैं
जी
ले ही
जी,
नहीं पाया, फिर मैं कॉल बैक भी नहीं कर पाया।
नहीं
ओके,
कोई
शायद
दिक्कत नहीं।
फिर मैंने अभी देखा कि अरे डिटेल्स ही नहीं आई हुई, तो फिर मैंने पिंग किया। कैसे हैं आप लोग?
बस बढ़िया, डेट बढ़ गया
कोविड
ऑडिट
में
तो
का।
थोड़ा डाउटफुल हो रहे थे आज वेबिनार करने के लिए, फिर अभी
15 तारीख से
मैसेज
पहले जो है टेंशन तो सबको होती है। अभी भी ये जो न्यूज़ है, मुझे लगता है अभी कुछ मिनटों पहले ही आई है, तो
हाँ जी, हाँ
इसकी
हाँ जी
वजह से
जी
खैर,
जी
इसकी
जी।
वजह से हमारी ऑडियंस तो नहीं बढ़ने वाली, क्योंकि लोग तो अभी
सरकार को पता
रिलैक्स
लग गया
करेंगे।
था कि आपकी वेबिनार है, उन्होंने कहा रास्ता दे दो जरा।
रिलैक्स करेंगे अभी तो लोग, क्योंकि अभी तो एकदम से जो है ये टेंशन तो सबको हो ही रही है कि अपना ख्याल
वेटिंग रूम में
रखो, हेल्थ
हटाइए
का ख्याल
अपना
रखो या
अच्छा।
क्लाइंट का ख्याल रखो, सबको प्रॉब्लम हो रही है।
तो जेन्युइन प्रॉब्लम है सर।
हाँ, जेन्युइन प्रॉब्लम है कि क्लाइंट का ख्याल रखो या
नहीं
हेल्थ का
वो भी
ख्याल।
है, यूटिलिटी भी चेंज करते जा रहे हैं फिर फ्रीक्वेंटली गवर्नमेंट जो है।
वो तो खैर हर साल का ही सिस्टम है, बट सबसे ज्यादा तो मैं कहता हूँ, अभी भी मेरे पास कुछ क्लाइंट ऐसे हैं जिन्होंने अभी तक शुरू भी नहीं करवाया काम, तो उनका तो क्या ही कर सकते हो ना।
अभी एक क्लाइंट आया मेरे पास, बुलाया हुआ था उसको डिस्कस के
हम्म।
लिए, नीचे आके खड़ा हुआ के उस इंफॉर्मेशन आई कि मदर जो है ज्यादा तबीयत खराब है, थोड़ी देर बाद आ गया कि जो है एक्सपायर हो गई।
ओहो, दैट्स सो
ये हाल
सैड।
है, क्या कर सकते हैं।
हेलो।
आप लोगों के यहाँ सब सही है? फैमिली में एवरीवन इज ओके? ऑफिस में सब ठीक है?
हाँ सब ठीक है, बस
हम्म,
सावधानी
चलिए
की
बढ़िया।
जरूरत है।
हाँ, सावधानी की जरूरत है, बट ये काफी वो है, काफी स्प्रेड करता है ये वाला वेरिएंट, काफी उस तरीके से ऐसा है।
हाँ जी, हाँ जी, वही है।
आज अंकित जी हम लोग का जीएसटी 1 का भी था, 11 लास्ट डेट जीएसटी का।
हाँ, सारी डेटें हर महीने आती हैं जी।
इनपुट नहीं मिलेगा बिना का चढ़ाए, सामने वाला पीछे पड़कर भेज भेज के परेशान किया हुआ है। 11-13
वो है ना, वो तो सिस्टम होता है ना कि भाई कई लोग ऐसे हैं जो कहते हैं कि भैया हमें कुछ नहीं पता, ये लो हमारे सीए का नंबर, वो तुम जानो और वो जाने, हमें
बहुत लोग
तुम्हें
हैं, बहुत
इनपुट
लोग हैं।
नहीं मिल रहा, इससे हमें कुछ नहीं लेना देना।
बस व्हाट्सएप फॉरवर्ड कर दे।
चलो, जैसे आईपी होता है ना, उसकी तरफ चारों तरफ गनमैन होते हैं, ऐसे सीए के चारों तरफ गनमैन लगे हुए हैं। ये वो पुरानी तोते में बंद करके रखते हैं उसे पिंजरे में,
मैं तो कहता हूँ
कहीं
मैं
उड़
तो
ना
कहता हूँ
जाए।
सीएस की मैं तो कहता हूँ सीएस की इम्पोर्टेंस बनी रहे,
हाँ
इससे
जी,
बढ़िया बात कोई और हो नहीं सकती। चलो जीएसटी में कुछ लोगों को हमारी जरूरत है, अच्छी बात है, बहुत सारे लोगों ने तो जीएसटी में सीए को हटा ही दिया है सिस्टम में से, तो कहते हैं सब कुछ हमारा इंटरनली होगा, बड़ी कंपनी ने तो कर ही दिया है, अच्छा है।
तो मेरा मानना है,
हम्म,
हेलो,
हाँ हाँ,
मेरा मानना है कि अब अपने को जो है कंप्लाइंस ही इतना महत्वपूर्ण नहीं है जितना कि एडवाइजरी या लिटिगेशन।
बिल्कुल सर, एडवाइजरी की तरफ ही है सारा कुछ, जो एडवाइजरी की तरफ
क्योंकि
जाना चाहिए।
कंप्लाइंसिस तो सारा ऑटोमेटिक हो गया।
हाँ 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 हाँ, बिल्कुल ठीक कह रहे हैं।
अभी देखिए, अभी एक फीचर्स आया है जीएसटी पोर्टल पे कि ऑटोमेटिक इंटरेस्ट कैलकुलेशन होगा।
हाँ।
दैट इज गुड आल्सो, क्योंकि आज तक तो हम इंटरेस्ट देते ही नहीं थे किसी पे भी, लेट सेवर पे कैलकुलेट करते ही नहीं थे कभी भी। तो ये कमरसम है, जिसको कैलकुलेट करो, ये करो, वो करो, फिर क्लाइंट भी कहता है क्यों चक्कर में पड़ते हो, भेज दो,
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल।
जब आएगा जब सोचेंगे। तो अच्छा है वैसे तो ऑटोमेशन, उसमें डिस्प्यूट भी होंगे तो अच्छे लेवल के होंगे।
हम्म।
तो मेनली तो एडवाइजरी ज्यादा रिलेवेंट है पीरियड में, क्योंकि हर एक क्लाइंट और अकाउंटेंट सब समझदार हैं।
बिल्कुल 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 ठीक कह रहे हैं आप। एडवाइजरी जो है उसी में जाने का मतलब बनता है, एडवाइजरी, और दूसरा आजकल कहते हैं डील मेकिंग,
हाँ
कि
जी, हाँ
भाई
जी,
आप किसी भी तरीके से क्लाइंट का फाइनेंशियल फायदा करवा सको, दैट
राइट
इज
राइट,
व्हाट इज द आइडिया।
वही है। तो विशाल जी शुरू करें?
जी जी शुरू करते हैं।
हाँ, शुरू कर दीजिए, आपके रहेंगे तो टाइम अपना लेट है।
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of JIPA, we welcome you all. On the topic of opportunity of professionals and valuation under IBC 2016, we have invited C. Ankit Goyal ji. And now I like to introduce first our chairman Praveen Jain sir. He is a former member of JIPA. He is the founder member of JIPA. He is a practicing chartered accountant with more than 30 years experience. He is an insolvency professional, registered valuer, and I congratulate C. Praveen Jain sir for conducting the various knowledge sharing program. Now I like to introduce my speaker, Ankit Goyal ji. He is very dynamic and a young personality, and C. Ankit Goyal ji is a practicing chartered accountant. He is a BCom honors, DISA registered valuer. Ankit ji has done a certificate course of ICA, various courses like the valuation, Ind AS, and anti-money laundering laws, forensic audit and fraud detection, concurrent audit, indirect taxes. Ankit ji has a founder member of AAA Valuation Professional LLP, AAA Insolvency Professional LLP, AAA and Company LLP. He is a director of AAA Capital Service Private Limited. He has done lot of assignment of insolvency valuation, and he has a vast exposure in CA practice. We welcome Ankit ji, and now I like Praveen Jain sir. Please tell some word or opening remark for the opening of the session.
Thank you, Vishal ji. I would like to welcome Shri Ankit Goyal ji, our guest speaker and most prominent and chairman of valuation committee of JIPA, and Vishal ji and all participants. I most respectfully welcome all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Praveen ji. Now I like Ankit Goyal ji. Please share some views of opportunities of professional and valuation under the IBC Code 2016. So Ankit ji, please.
Thank you, Vishal ji. Thank you, Parveen ji. Thank you so much for the introduction, and it is good to be part of this forum. And I would say that I would request Ghanshyam ji, Pallavi ji, and Piyush ji to be perhaps interactive in this discussion on these opportunities. If I may ask all three of them to share their background so that I can talk about the subject with much more specificity to their individual requirements, and we will keep on adding the additional pointers for others who are joining us today. So if I may ask all of you to give a brief about whether you're insolvency professionals or registered valuers or chartered accountants, it will be a pleasure in that case to address your individual concerns with respect to opportunities available for professionals in IBC and of course valuation under IBC.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Pallavi. Yes.
Sir, I am not, at present, I am not the IP, but I am aspiring to be one within a month.
And you're a chartered accountant, Pallavi ma'am?
Yes, I am practicing chartered accountant from Lucknow and practicing since last 15 years.
Okay. And are you also exploring being a registered valuer?
Yeah, I am planning to. First, I would be clearing IP then.
Your specialization as a chartered accountant is into the traditional practice or something specialized?
Right now I am into the traditional practice, but now planning to switch over the, my passion is towards IP only.
Nice. Piyush Jain ji, Ghanshyam ji.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Ankit ji, hello.
Yes, Ghanshyam ji.
Actually, I am ex-banker and insolvency professional also, and I work with, you can say, you are AAA insolvency professional IPE as a sport personnel also, and as AR in one of the case with Sehgal.
Nice.
Sehgal ji, and in one of the case with SK Gupta ji.
Oh, so you're an insolvency professional. Great, sir.
Yeah. And I have seen the process of all valuation, you can say, in a process. CIRP, I have attended the entire case. And as AR also, I have just concluded that, you can say.
We'll keep receiving feedback from you as well, sir, during this whole session. Maybe we can also have feedback from Piyush ji, and then we can start with the presentation.
Definitely.
Parveen ji, you will have to allow me to share my screen.
Yes, kariye. Sharing kariye. Sharing screen. Just a minute.
Yeah.
Okay, sir. You may share.
Great. So quickly talk about all the subject matters, and I will request Pallavi ji and Ghanshyam ji to share whatever questions, queries they have as we talk about all these topics that are at hand. And if we talk about IBC, I think Ghanshyam ji already understands the objectives of IBC. For Pallavi ji, it is very important, Pallavi ji, to understand that IBC as a code, as a law, has various objectives, and these are the ones that are listed down in the act itself, and basically involves the idea of improving the ease of doing business. And when you talk about ease of doing business, we always look at the ease of starting a business, right? Whenever we look at that number, we say how many days or how much effort is required to incorporate a company in India or start a new business, what registrations are required for the same. But at the same time, in the Western world and within the World Bank system of rating companies for ease of doing business, it is also important to make it easy for somebody to shut down a business which is not working. So presently in India, we do not have that system where we are having a easy it's shutdown of a business. Whenever a company is not able to do business, it suffers losses. There might be creditors, there might be unpaid loans. So normally we see that it is very, very difficult for promoters to shut down those businesses and just wind them up. So that is what is being eased in the IBC framework. If somebody is not able to do business, he has made losses, IBC allows that person to file for insolvency and then proceed with liquidation of the company at a later stage. So that essentially promotes entrepreneurship, because if you know today that yes, if you are if you turn entrepreneur and you are not successful, then there is a way of going back to normalcy and not getting stuck in that venture forever. Then improving the availability of credit at low markup, balance the interest of all stakeholders, maximization of the value of assets. So it is also found that in insolvency, or in rather when surfaces apply to a company and its assets are sold on a piecemeal basis, it is normally understood that the assets, when they're sold on a piecemeal basis, realize much lesser value as compared to what IBC or what a process can realize, where the entire company or entire operations are sold as a going concern. So that is what we are looking at here. The code involves all these things. Differentiation, it is important to differentiate insolvency from bankruptcy and liquidation. Bankruptcy, insolvency is where simple definition of insolvency is that you have some debts to pay which are outstanding and which are pending to be paid. And how do you pay those? So you don't have the means to pay them at that date. So that means that there is a solvency problem. That means that you have debts to pay, but you don't have any liquid assets to realize that value from. One can easily have a large building, a land parcel, a lot of assets at their hands. But if they're not able to use those assets to create cash flows to pay short-term liabilities or immediately pending liabilities, then that also involves insolvency. What is liquidation? Liquidation is liquidating a company. So you can't liquidate a person. You can only liquidate a company. So when liquidation, you say that, okay, we will liquidate, that is sell off all the assets, liquidate all the assets, distribute that money that is realized to all the stakeholders and finish the company. What do you do in bankruptcy? In bankruptcy is more to do with an individual. So in bankruptcy, whenever we talk about bankruptcy, we always talk about individuals who are required to go through a bankruptcy process, because you can't liquidate a person. You have to process the bankruptcy of that person, and that involves a process where you say that, okay, all his debts are then finished, and then that person can start a new life after finishing the bankruptcy process. What is why is it a code? Because it is a comprehensive law which talks about various laws and kind of overrides many laws, because the nature of the law is such that it requires protection against the creditors for the business. It also involves the change in management, where an independent professional comes into the picture to make sure that everything is all right and there is no hanky-panky going on. Clear? Is that clear? So in case you have any doubts, do let me know. Framework of the code.
Very clear.
Yeah. Sorry? Yes. Thank you so much. So let me know in case you have any questions on any concept. Framework of the code. So the regulator is IBBI, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India. IBBI, who all does it regulate? It regulates insolvency professional agencies, it regulates insolvency professionals, insolvency professional entities, information utilities, registered valuers, registered valuer entities. Presently, IBBI regulates all these people. Adjudicating authorities involve the NCLT and the DRT. NCLT, the appeals of NCLT go to NCLAT, that is National Company Law Appellate Tribunal, and the appeals for Debt Recovery Tribunal go to DRAT, that is Debt Recovery Appellate Tribunal. So that is the adjudication that is required. So these are the bodies and these are the entities which are core to the bankruptcy court. This chart will be of interest to both of you, because this is the kind of this is a very, very easy idea, or gives a very easy idea of how many cases are there which are ongoing in the industry, in the market. And if you look at this number, there was a tremendous increase of about 700 cases in the year March 18. Then there was a further increase. Now these 700 cases which were there in financial year 17-18 jumped to about 1200 cases or 1150 cases for 18-19. This further jumped to a very, very high number of about 2000 cases in 1920 financial year. After that, in financial year 2021, it has now dropped to about 600, 500 cases. Then in June quarter, it has been about 140 cases. And in the month of September also, it has been about 140 cases. So this is the kind of number that on a quarterly basis, it is about 140 cases, more or like almost about 50 cases a month that are coming out. And if you look at the closure numbers are also increasing. But at the same time, the closure numbers are almost stuck at a point where they are not going down. But yes, at some point in time in financial year 2021, the ongoing cases did drop from 1800 cases to 1600 cases. But these ongoing cases are more or less sticky number. It's a sticky number. It is not going down. So there might be some cases which are coming in, some cases that are getting resolved. But most of these cases, it seems, are stuck at some point in time where the decision is pending with respect to the CRP processes. But the major idea about sharing this chart is that it is important for us to understand that what are the total numbers of CRP cases that we're looking at with respect to opportunities that we are seeing. So there we see a lot of competition now in CRP cases where the banks have a lot of one of few mandates are still pending with the NCLT for decision making. The banks are having a very, very competitive system of choosing an insolvency professional. So all that is going on. Mode of closure of CRP. So most cases go for liquidation, and some then the second highest number is for appeal, review, and settled. Then there is a withdrawn under section 12A cases where these cases are just withdrawn because under section 12A the company or the CRP can be reversed in case after the commencement of the CRP the primary creditor which took the company to insolvency is paid by the company or is settled by the company. And lastly, there is an approval plan, resolution plan, which is passed in 14% of the overall cases. These numbers are also very interesting, gives you an idea about the industry-wise analysis of what kind of companies come into insolvency. In case you look at these numbers, you will see that real estate, renting, and business activities is a major part of all companies which come in. And in case you look at various manufacturing industries, you will find a wide variety of companies coming into insolvency. And construction and wholesale and retail trade related companies are also on the higher side. So this is the kind of number. And then you have ongoing cases for various industries in this chart, which is basically as at 30th September 2021. Stakeholder-wise distribution and trends of initiation of CRP. Basically, here we are talking about who initiates the CRPs normally. So initially, a lot of cases were started by corporate debtors themselves, but this number is limited now. It grows only very, very nominally now. And financial creditors are perhaps now the leading people who are filing more and more or who are initiating more and more CRPs. Operational creditors numbers have gone down ever since the limit or the threshold limit for somebody to have a default was increased from 1 lakh rupees to 1 crore rupees, which was during when the pandemic started. Of course, there was a moratorium also which was given that 1 year there will be no CRP cases. So that also affected the number of cases. So insolvency professional is required to be honest, straightforward, forthright in all his professional relationships, should have good communication skills, must maintain complete independence without external influence, this reasonable care and diligence is expected while doing the process. The role is challenging but rewarding also. So all these things, I think you can always go through this, not very important. Qualification experience of requirements for insolvency professionals. You can be a CA. So I think almost all of you are aware of these requirements. I will jump this. So you can be an interim resolution professional. You can be a resolution professional after the interim resolution process or interim resolution phase of 40 days finishes. 30 days is the period where the insolvency resolution process professional works, and 10 days is the period granted to NCLT. That NCLT would normally appoint an RP or confirm an RP within 10 days of the finalization of the process. Then, of course, there's a liquidation process. So one can be a liquidator, representative of a creditor in committee of creditors. As Sir was saying, he's already been there. Representative of class of creditors, voluntary representative of class of creditors. He was telling he was part of it as an AR. Voluntary liquidator, resolution professional for individuals, partnerships, proprietorship firms, bankruptcy trustee, promote an insolvency professional entity. These are the things one can do, and kind of as an insolvency professional. PPIRP is another process, so one can always be a PPIRP consultant. PPIRP is a very different process as compared to CIRP. It is more about consultation with the person who is supposed to plan for PPIRP and plan for a one-time settlement kind of a process, rather than having a system where the company is simply taken over. So PPIRP is different in multiple aspects. But the main idea, of course, is resolution of a problem that is the debt which is not being paid in time. Interim resolution process takes over the company, custody of the corporate debtor as a going concern, understand the financial position of the corporate debtors, including fund flow and asset liability mismatch, understand the formation, objectives, sustenance, reasons for default of corporate debtor, take over control and operations of all bank accounts of corporate debtor, public announcement of CRP and inviting claims, receiving, collating, verification of claims, constitution of committee of creditors, appoint representatives of class of creditors. So all these things are what an interim resolution professional would do for the purpose of as an interim resolution professional, basically. Resolution professional then continues the operations of the corporate debtor as a going concern, manages the entire business. So the resolution professional is basically focused on trying to find a resolution plan, which is then finding approval of the COC in the same, verifying the resolution plan, making sure that all the process that is required to be conducted by the COC to find a resolution to the problem of the company is solved. Keep the company as a going concern, preserve all the assets, make sure that nothing is missing there. That is what a resolution professional is supposed to do. Liquidator, the liquidator basically again continues the operation in case the operations are still there, and otherwise he's supposed to then make a public announcement for inviting claims, receive, collate, verify and admit claims of all stakeholders. So all the other things that are normally required by the liquidator to be done. Let me know in case you have any questions on any of these roles that a resolution professional has to take care of. As a representative or member of, please.
Okay, you can find. Go ahead.
So representative or member of committee of creditors, a member of COC can appoint an IP only as representative for attending the meeting. So COC maybe maybe a banker is say a part of a COC. So a member of COC can appoint an IP who the COC may understand, or the member of the COC may understand to be having specialized knowledge in the process of IBC, and therefore that person can then represent the COC, represent the member in a better way. That is the idea. This is the system of being an authorized representative of a class of creditors. So class of creditors can be for home buyer class, and there the authorized representative, the AR, is required to represent that class of creditors and so circulate the agenda notices, because maybe it is not possible for a large number of creditors to attend the meeting themselves. So therefore they can always have a representative, and that representative then can represent those class of creditors within the COC. This is the number of the registered IPs and AFAs. Now, if you look at these number, the overall number of registered IPs has increased to 3,816 RPs. But what is happening on the other side is that the number of RPs which are having an authorization for assignment are decreasing. So if in case you look at the trend for the last 3-4 quarters, you'll find that the total RPs with AFAs are not are decreasing. So that kind of signifies that many people are perhaps leaving the insolvency profession, and they are looking at other areas and then ignoring the AFA renewal because they may not be wanting to have a case with them. Here, with respect to geographical distribution of IPs, this is an old number in March 31st. This is the newsletter extract. So you will find the various RPs from various places across the nation. Then when we talk about age profile of IPs, so you will see that the age profile is pretty dynamic. Mostly it is between 40 to 50 and 50 to 60, 60 to 70. And yeah, few RPs from 30 to 40 bracket. So this number again is of course growing. So let's hope that it continues to grow. Voluntary liquidator. So to verify that no default is committed by the corporate debtor. So here the voluntary liquidator is then required to take the company to the liquidation through the liquidation process. Then of course voluntary means that the company is choosing to be liquidated. So there is always this process where if the company is solvent, the company has enough assets for all the liabilities, and the company then goes to NCLT and says that okay, we don't want to function, we don't want this company to be there anymore, so we want to finish off this company. So in that process, you liquidate the company and liquidate all the assets by way of sale or realization and distribute the sale proceeds to creditors. All that then can be done in this manner. Commencement of voluntary liquidation. So this is the kind of numbers that companies have gone into voluntary liquidation, and the closed voluntary liquidations are again there on the other side. So yes, there is again a backlog or rather a pendency here that yes, the voluntary liquidations are also in process. Again, something that perhaps needs work from so that this pendency is also finished. Resolution plan for individuals, partnerships. What has been notified right now is that the personal guarantees to corporate debtors, the personal guarantors to corporate debtors, insolvency, the process has been notified for them. And those people can either themselves or the personal guarantors to corporate debtors can either file their insolvency on their own, or it can be filed by somebody else against them. There is a lot of action happening in this front because the banks have a mandate from the Ministry of Finance to start the personal guarantors insolvency, because what the allegation is always that, oh, you're finishing off the companies, and the companies you're giving the companies, you know, such a big write-off, and you're writing off all these bad loans that you have given to corporate debtors without any penalty on the fraudsters and all those people who are the promoters behind these companies. So the idea now is to have, you know, personal guarantors and action taken against personal guarantors to, you know, put them accountable for all this. But in most cases, what we have seen is that these personal guarantors have already liquidated their assets and, you know, already planned for kind of an insolvency or for personal suits, and they hardly have any assets left to be distributed to the guarantors or to other people. Bankruptcy trustee is again for individuals. That's where the process goes to after the insolvency process is complete for individuals.
Ankit, one question.
Anji.
Yeah. That personal guarantor case should directly go to NCLT or DRT. There are some dispute, and now I think there are some cases decided in the court also.
No, it is very clear that if there is a case which is pending in NCLT, when we talk about a case which is pending, we are saying where a CIRP or a liquidation is pending before the NCLT. In that case, the case is required to be filed against the personal guarantor in NCLT. If the case is closed, or if there is a resolution plan which is filed and the case is no longer pending, in that case the jurisdiction for individual guarantors is DRT.
Okay. Yes. And in case subsequently the case is filed with NCLT, then
subsequently then the jurisdiction in effect is changing. So whoever is working against an application or working for an application against a personal guarantor, if the person makes an application in say DRT, and subsequently the company, the corporate debtor also goes into insolvency, or NCLT order comes for the initiation of CIRP for that case, then the idea is that the application ideally should also move to NCLT, because the whole idea of giving NCLT the powers to take up the matter of insolvency for individual personal guarantors was that these cases are, in many instances attached to each other. Now, in case, say, there is a fraud application that there is a puff transaction where the director has, say, taken away a few crores. In that case, you have NCLT managing that case, or the NCLT managing, the various company matters. And on the other side, you have another court managing the individual insolvency. So the idea was to combine the cases always. So time will tell us in case the whole mistiming, or rather I would say the lack of perfect timing, where the timing for a insolvency for a company CD matter to be resolved in NCLT may be very different from the timing of admittance of a personal guarantor case. So they are the only hiccups. So ideally there shouldn't be too much of a gap anyways, but if there is a gap, then let the, I think, jurisprudence tell us on what will happen in those special circumstances where either the CRP case starts after the personal guarantor case starts in DRT, or otherwise.
Oh.
This is what you need to make sure that the client wants.
So insolvency professional entity, the minimum net worth requirement is 1 crore rupees. IPE can be formed as a company, LLP, or a registered partnership firm. And the sole objective is to provide support services to insolvency professionals. And it's not important now that they are directors or partners. It can be anyone. It can be any insolvency professional who is wanting to take the services of the IPE. So that is what is required. The idea is that if we talk about an insolvency professional entity, it has the infrastructure, it has the human resources, it has people who can support the insolvency professional in basically doing his duties as a insolvency professional, interim resolution professional, liquidator, bankruptcy trustee, and all that.
This means so much for the market classified, right?
I will request Arvindji to mute himself in case he's wanting to speak something, then he can always unmute himself at that point in time. Then, of course, IPEs, the number has been steadily at 86, not increased or decreased too much since 2021. A few IPEs were recognized after that, and a few have been de-recognized also. So this is the activity on the IPE front. When you talk about opportunities available to professionals other than insolvency professionals, one, the insolvency professionals at time need support services, so one can always provide that. Advisor to corporate debtors, so one can always advise to corporate debtors undergoing CRP process. So there is always this consultancy which is possible in case you have knowledge of IBC. Consultations to entities under financial stress, including options and threats under IBC. So that's also there. Then protection against insolvency attacks and recovery of business debtors and advances through IBC. Then advisor to resolution applicant for taking over companies, transaction audit or forensic audit, services of a registered valuer, and consultancy under such a scheme. These are the things that are kind of associated with IBC in some manner, and which gives opportunities to professionals who want to work in the IBC framework or around the IBC framework. Another opportunity, of course, is information utilities. So the information utility is NESL right now. National E-Governance Services Limited is the name of the company. And that company has created a framework where somebody can arrange to have his overall debts reported to NESL. And the idea behind that is, of course, to kind of put it on record that, yes, this invoice was due. So the functioning, how it works is that a company says that, okay, these are my debts, and it uploads that to NESL site. NESL then sends out an email to the person who is required to pay that debt, and in that process, NESL kind of confirms or seeks confirmation from that person on the validity of that debt. So that's the idea behind it. Insolvency professionals also sometimes need support services. They can, there will be a requirement of preparing an information memorandum, preparing a report on business and financial operations of corporate debtor for the previous 2 years, claim verification process. All these things are required to be done. And these support services are required to be sometimes required by the insolvency professionals. Advisor to corporate debtors, if you can plan some corporate debtors who is ongoing, who has an ongoing CIP process, if you can advise that person, then that is also a very, very valuable input and a very, very rewarding work. So consultations to entities under financial stress. So the idea is that whenever somebody is in financial stress, the idea is to understand the various options available with that person to go forward. So one option is, you take more loans and then kind of maybe make a capital investment which will bring efficiency into your business, and then you can try and increase your profitability. The other idea is that you say, okay, you enter IBC and then use that framework. The third idea is that you let SFAC happen. There's nothing that we can stop. We can't stop it and all that. So the idea is, whenever you do consultancy for a stressed asset and you don't know IBC, your consultancy will always be perhaps incomplete. So that is what needs to be taken care of. Protection against insolvency attacks and recovery of debts with IBC. So the idea is that this is another work that you can do. You can offer your clients protection against insolvency attacks. You can say, do you have any claims from any person? Do you have any bills that have been raised by somebody against the client? And you can ask the client in case he has raised a dispute, make sure that the client does that, so that there is no question on, there's no ready recoverability, or somebody can't go to NCLT and simply say he owes this money, right? Resolution applicants are those people who are coming to acquire a company which is under insolvency. So a corporate debtor enters into insolvency due to maybe initiated by the OL, maybe initiated by the FC, the OC, or the company itself. But the idea is that the resolution applicant also requires advisory for understanding the IBC process and then concluding all the process within IBC. Transaction audit is required for what is called PUF transactions. What is the full form of PUF? Preferential, undervalued, fraudulent, extortionate. What is preferential transactions? Preferential transaction is where the corporate debtor has paid to one person keeping in waiting the other people. So basically the priority perhaps was the bank, because the bank had the secured was the secured creditor, and they had an amount outstanding, but the amount was first paid to maybe the director's brother. So how do you manage that? So you simply say that's a preferential transaction that is required to be reversed and all that. What does undervalued means? Undervalued means that you are selling something or selling an asset of the company for less than the sale consideration or less than the ideal value. Extortionate is where you kind of say that, oh, you're charging 18, 25%, 30% interest. So that's extortionate credit transaction, where somebody has given you credit, but the terms are extortionate to the company. Then fraudulent. So all transactions with the intent of defrauding the creditors are part of the fraudulent transactions. Clear? These are the numbers for registered valuers. So we have about 43,4366 registered values as at 30th September 2021. And the number is growing. The number of SFA valuers is also growing rapidly, because like in the beginning, in the last few years, in case you see, they will find that the land and building values were way higher as compared to the securities of financial asset valuers. That is changing very rapidly. Now, registered valuers, these are the numbers. We have already seen that. Then we have 44 RVEs, registered valuer entities today. And that's something where you have entities. Some of these are almost 20 of these are registered for all the 3 asset classes. The others are for maybe 1 or 2 asset classes. This is how the registration of RVs has happened over the period of time. So in case you see, the number has been pretty constant. It has been increasing. My registration was 150 number, which is 2018, one of the first few registrations. And of course, since then the number has increased tremendously. This is the region-wise breakup of the registered valuers. This is the geographical distribution of RVs as on 31st March 2021. The age profile of RVs is again mixed up. So majorly the people are in 50 to 60 bracket, or in 40-50 or 30-40. The 60 to 70 bracket seems to be missing in the RV profile somehow. So maybe we can say that it is the RV people are relatively younger than the insolvency professional people. So a registered valuer is required to basically give various services as a registered valuer under the Companies Act 2013, and under the whole governance is under section 237, and then of course 247, and of course then there is company registered valuers and valuation rules, which are again applicable to the valuers and the valuation that is done under the Companies Act. So these are very, very powerful rules which give a lot of powers to the regulator to make sure that the work that the registered valuer is doing is done properly.
Sir, आपका video off हो गया?
I will just check that. Should be okay now. So the eligibility of becoming a registered valuer is that, of course, the person should be registered with IBB as a valuer. Then he has to be a member of an RVO. We have about 16 RVOs in the country. I think these were the numbers. Let me just look at the exact numbers today. So this was about about 10-15 RBOs, which are presently having the values registered under them. Then we have the idea is to have an eligibility criteria, which kind of makes sure that the person is having the relevant academic experience. So in case of a land and building valuer, majorly what is required is an architect or a civil engineer. For a plant and machinery valuer, it was originally electrical or mechanical engineering, but then later on it was extended to aeronautical engineering, etc., etc. So all those things have also been added. For an SFA valuer, you can be a chartered accountant, CS, CMA, or you can be basically an MBA graduate and all that. So there are other conditions that you can go through, and yes, there are other valuation related courses that are recognized by IBBI, some of them. So that is the qualification that is required, and one has to be a resident Indian, has to pass an exam. The exam is getting difficult with time. When we passed the exam, it was relatively easy, but today it is definitely a difficult exam as compared to when we passed it years back. Same is the case, I think, is with the insolvency professional exam also, because the level has been increasing with time. So the demand for registered valuers is increasing because more and more people are understanding the strict framework, the regulatory framework that the registered valuers have, and that is where the demand is coming from primarily. So recently there was this Deepam tender, department for investment and promotion of promotion and all the basically the disinvestment division. They had a tender where they only selected registered valued entities to participate. There were other such opportunities where only the RVs are being approached for taking up those valuations. So valuation required under Income Tax Act is also something that is there. So presently, yes, the valuations can be done by some wealth tax registered valuers also. But then the draft valuer bill is something that is there, which is supposed to change all this and perhaps bring all the valuations that are happening in the entire country to maybe one table. Valuation required under Companies Act. So these are the various sections under which the valuations are required under Companies Act. You can have a look at it. Very, very fairly simple. So good opportunities for registered valuers. Qualifications, one can be a graduate in any stream, become a member of any of these three institutions, MBA, PGDM, postgraduate degree in finance, all these things can be there. And so that's the idea. Sashakt scheme was RBI's scheme for restructuring of stressed assets, and there were 2-3 schemes, different schemes. One was applicable to everyone. One was applicable only for MSMEs. One was applicable only for the COVID-related defaults, where the defaults happened once COVID came into the picture. So that's where the Sashakt scheme kind of has a role, and there is a lot of consultancy that one can do in that scheme, and the idea is to understand the options available and understand how things require to be managed so that ideally the company can function and continue to operate and can be saved from the creditors. So when should a sundry debtor go suo motu to NCLT? So the idea is that Section 10 empowers a company corporate applicant to file an application to CARP, and the corporate applicant means corporate debtor, member of a partner. So all these people can actually file, and these are the people who are where the corporate debtor should not ideally go suo motu to NCLT. So wherever these an undischarged, insolvent, willful defaulter, NPA account, so these people are not eligible to take back the company or basically apply for a resolution, apply as a resolution applicant for the corporate debtor. So the corporate debtor can go to NCLT for restructuring of stress at the initial stage before the CD becomes ineligible for submission of resolution plan. Situation can be controlled before the business is getting adversely impacted by way of losing credibility, loss of customer trust, loss of human resources. Corporate debtor with too many litigations, statutory liabilities, high financial and operational debt, but is having a good business model. So these are people who can justify the corporate debtor to go to NCLT and try to find a solution there or resolution there. So banks are not doing any restructuring in the last 2 to 3 years, and financial stress worsened further. NPA classification was being delayed in connivance with banks and other professionals. However, the priorities of banks have changed now. It is better that CD goes to NCLT before any other person make an application. So all these are things that are justifications for the corporate debtor to go to NCLT. So these are various reasons why the corporate debtor should not go to NCLT, because there's a loss of investor confidence. Various banks, other financial creditors, and they might have a very difficult phase in doing all this. So in one of the recent companies where we took a company to a PPIRP, we went to the bank and gave them a PPIRP proposal. The bank not only rejected the PPIP proposal or rather ignored it, but the bank immediately blocked all the accounts of the company. So the company was having regular business with all its clients, all its customers, and suddenly their bank was blocked because the bankers saw a PPIRP proposal on their table, and they realized that no, we must take immediate action and block the affairs of the company and not allow these people to work even one day more. So that's the kind of reaction that was there. So that is a major risk and apprehension, because the creditors and the PSU banks and maybe other creditors also may not be wanting to give the company back to the same promoter. That is a major issue. Professionals can, of course, use PPIRP, as I talked about. Pre-packaged insolvency resolution process is slightly different from CIRP, wherein the control remains with the directors, number one, as long as the directors are not doing anything fraudulent. The moment it is felt that the directors are doing something fraudulent, the PPIRP process can be converted into a CIRP process. Number two, it's a consultative process where a pre-package or a pre-pack kind of a resolution plan is already approved, approved prior to the application of the PPIRP process with the NCLT. So there's a consultative process which first has to happen with the bank, and then subsequently that consultative process then shifts to the actual CIRP kind of a process, only with the exception that here the original promoters get the right to kind of a first refusal, as long as their bid is significantly higher than the next bid, because it is understood that being an MSME, this is applicable only to MSMEs. It is understood that MSMEs have this special status where a lot of work and a lot of know-how is with the promoters themselves. So kicking them out doesn't help the process of reviving the industry. Mukesh ji, I will request you to mute yourself. If you have something to say, you can unmute yourself. So when we talk about insolvency attacks, the idea now is to, because all of us are professionals, we all know that when we talk to our clients, we must tell them that if they have any creditors, any outstanding creditors who they don't want to pay, who are disputed, who they want to pay but they want to pay them later, not right now, then we need to tell them that how do you safeguard the company, the corporate debtor, and its assets in case IRP is appointed under IBC code. So that's what is required to be done. So how to safeguard corporate debtor and its assets from insolvency attacks? So the present regime of pure perish and awareness is spreading like fire. So that is what we are looking at here. How to safeguard corporate debtor and its assets from insolvency attacks? So basically register a dispute. So either the idea is to pay the balance or the idea is to register a dispute. These are the two things that can be done, two options. The CAs, when they are statutory auditors, have an important role to play again. So the idea is that, just give me a second, I will just relocate myself at a place where it is not so noisy. Just a second. Yes. So the idea is that the chartered accountants, statutory auditors need to be careful now, because when a company goes into IBC, in most cases the records are not available from the directors, from the ex-directors, ex-promoters, and the company. Then the next option for insolvency professionals is to seek some information from the statutory auditors, because the statutory auditors, whatever audit notes, audit documents are available with the statutory auditors, and they are sought from the auditors. And there again, the auditors at times are not able to provide the documentation, which puts them at risk, where somebody can always say that they were supposed to have these audit papers or audit comfort documents, which were not available with them. So that is what auditors need to be careful about. Although practically not, there are hardly any cases where the auditors have been have been punished for any lack of diligence or on their part, or documentation available with their part. But there have been cases where the statutory auditors have been asked to cooperate. So those cases are there. So it's important for professionals to understand and see signs of diversion of bank loans, look at the various auditing responsibilities and the standards of auditing, look at CARO, and so keep themselves appraised of all these situations and keep themselves covered about all these risks. So the second is that, of course, you start seeing the business cycle to increase, the inventory keeps on increasing, the debtors keep increasing, old debtors keep increasing, which are not getting realized for a long time now. So then there is a chance of a zombie company scenario, where you kind of, the promoters start a new company and then shift everything to that company from the old company. So all these things also happen. Increasing the closing stock to declare profit. So all these things, not recording rejections, debit note issued by the customer, not recording purchase bills. So all these things are signs of business cycle getting increased. Outstanding balances are not secured or reconciled bill by bill. When corporate debtor requires more funds to meet, but old known liabilities or demands enhancement of fund or fund limits to fulfill its objections. So these are all various concerns that come out. Red flags is again something that one has to put on. So red flags is basically looking at all these possibilities and making sure that these possibilities are flagged, and these possibilities are basically identified by the transaction auditor or the forensic auditors. These are the various professional opportunities then which are available to various professionals in these kind of scenarios. Forensic audit, and basically this is a summary. So any questions on the opportunities available to insolvency professionals from any of the participants?
Nice, you explained very well, but only I want to know the compliances that's a very tough and the penalty that poses on the insolvency.
So there's a lot of compliance which is required to be done now, because the IBBI has made it a very strict system for insolvency professionals to report regularly on their various activities and various forms and online forms that they have prepared. So it is important for insolvency professionals to complete those compliances. That's part of the overall process where the IBBI wants to make sure that the insolvency professional has done his duties or completed his duties, and therefore they are very elaborate about what all needs to be done, what all needs to be taken care of by the insolvency professional. The other thing which you mentioned, penalty. So there are various orders now of disciplinary action against insolvency professionals, where yes, insolvency professionals have been told to pay penalties or to maybe reimburse, to return their fee, and so on. So those are penalty proceedings that I understand are required for the profession to remain close and have a strong integrity, because the numbers are very crucial here. You're dealing with crores and crores of assets as an insolvency professional, so integrity cannot be compromised. And the idea behind punishing and levying all these penalties is that in case you create some examples that yes, if somebody has done something wrong, this is the kind of punishment that we do, or we make for that person, then it is kind of the overall the profession kind of keeps a standard and keeps a level.
So recently one IP was removed because of non-compliances from the panel. So my question was how to proceed, whether I should, if I want to practice as an IP, this thing that discourages me a lot.
I don't think anyone should be discouraged by all these things. The idea is that one has to be careful, one has to have perfect knowledge of the law, do everything diligently, make sure that it is done with enough time at hand. It should not be an exercise, or you can't be an IP on a part-time basis. This is what I believe or we believe in. So you have to be an IP full-time basis, because it requires a lot of work. And especially after you get a few cases, you will feel that, and if those cases are larger ones or medium-sized cases, then there's a lot of work to be done, a lot of work. So therefore, you should have that time, you should have that passion. I don't think fearing against penalties will solve any problem.
Thank you, sir.
Ankit, one question.
Andy, sir.
What about this pre-pack is not picking up the way it was expected, and all the IPs were hoping that they will be getting more business under this new scheme, but only 1 or 2 cases are there in the NCLT so far.
So the problem in PPIRP right now is that the banks have a problem with this system, because the banks always had, say, we always compare this with the one-time settlement OTS framework. Now, when the OTS framework was in place and was brought into place, it took some time for banks to understand the OTS circular, OTS framework, which was launched by RBI, and they subsequently then, of course, subsequently now when we talk about this framework of PPIRP, similarly the banks are having internal policies. SBI has released their internal circular on PPIRP, and there are many other options. So I think it is only time that we will need for various bankers to understand the nitty-gritties of PPIRP and then start supporting a PPIRP process.
No, earlier OTS was, you can say, a very dangerous thing for the bankers, because there was accountability on the sanctioning authority for waiver of interest or something. And the cases are, you can say, follows them even after the retirement.
Yeah.
This is a good thing to be get a stamp from the NCLT. Process almost is the same, very simple. But somehow I think it is not picking up. I was attending a seminar from Singapore also on pre-pack. They were also launching so many helping platform to start this. But there also the things is like this only.
So,
Pre-pack is not that fancy.
good ideas often travel at a lesser speed than bad ideas. So I think it is only a matter of time that this will be, talked about in almost all banks internally. And after that, the banks can start supporting it, or the bankers can start deciding on it. Because, in any bank, wherever there is a internal circular, it is so rule bound at times that, that decision has to be taken by somebody, that yes, this should be put into um, into uh, into use like this.
And surface cases also are not coming up nowadays, despite the lot of defaults and increase of NPS.
Surface cases have only one problem, that most cases are maybe COVID related, or you would find recent cases. We see surface cases coming in, but yes, we also see that maybe the number has increased because all the people who are now owed more than a lakh rupees but less than a crore rupees have no other option but to look at other options and other ways of getting their money back. So of course surface is always initiated by the bank, but then sometimes bank is also doing it.
So wait period is long.
Surface case.
Yeah, in every cases now the things are going like this,
surface
because you are saying that 4,000 is the figure with the IPs. They are registered and the cases are declined like anything.
No, 2,500 IPs having AFAs are competing for the cases in the market. It's not more than that. Yeah.
Yes.
And there again, a lot of cases are allotted automatically through the NCLT route. So of course, being in the game and being part of the process is a good idea.
No.
Yeah, there was another question that somebody was asking.
Sir, you can ask.
Yes, sir.
Hello, Ankit ji. How we can meet the challenge of non-cooperation by CD in CIRP process?
So the idea is to like 2-3 processes that are adopted at our office, at our IPE. One, we try and educate the CD or the CD promoters on how there might be a how it is basically important for them to support the whole process, and how it is important for them not to become people who we can easily say are fraudulent and all that. So that makes some sense. And then of course you have to convince the CD that there is a resolution to the overall problem of the company, and that with the law you have to then tell that person this is the law, and normally they understand the whole process and try to support in the best possible manner.
Okay. It is seen from bankers' point of view that they go into IBC very late. Instead, they prefer surface. It is so.
Surface and IBC both have very different applications. For a asset which is a pure land and building asset, there is no going concern, there is nothing else that needs to be preserved. Surface would be the right choice. Say for a residential property which is mortgaged, you can't have a IBC process to exercise that mortgage. You have to have a surface process only. So it is very, very specific in that case. But if I talk about a factory which say has 400 workers who are working in that factory, I know for a fact that it is almost impossible for a surface action to be done at that factory. But if you act against that factory through IBC and block its accounts from getting any money from abroad, from outside, then you have things in control, and maybe, you know, you can come to the negotiation table and deal with those things.
Okay. Thank you.
Could you please tell something about how the IP should make the infrastructure for doing the IP work? As you are...
See, IP infrastructure would include trained human resources. That is the important thing in any office, any person's office, leave alone IPs. Then, of course, one looks at various formats. So as you keep working on various cases, you start building formats for various objectives. Say, I will give you an example. Say an income tax notice comes into place, and now that income tax department is asking you to appear in person before him because you're the liquidator and you are the authorized person for the company. So you have to then draft a reply for that person. But in case you already have drafted a reply, then you can improve and file.
Anybody have any question?
So I'll move on then.
Okay.
So accurate valuations in IBC is very, very important. I think we all understand that. I will completely the various effects of undervaluation are, of course, abnormal gain by a resolution applicant. Possible effects of an overvaluation are that, you know, the RP, the resolution plan will get rejected, and then there will be a delay in the overall process. So these are the possible effects. Valuation requirement, IBC happens under all these regulations, including CIRP, PPIRP, liquidation value, forensic transaction, and fast track CIRP, then voluntary liquidation, then individual bankruptcy for personal guarantors. So these are the valuation requirements under valuation. So in the CIRP process, 2 valuers are required to be appointed, and the process is that the resolution professional shall appoint them within 7 days of his appointment or 47th day from the insolvency commencement date. Why is this date 47 and 7? Because the insolvency interim resolution professional is, as per the timelines provided in the IBC, supposed to be replaced by a resolution professional not later than after 7 days from the confirmation date. So it is 40 days plus 7 days or 47 days from the CRP commencement date. So he is supposed to appoint 2 registered valuers as a qualification criteria who cannot be appointed. Then there is a valuation, value appointment and valuation process, which is again issue of RFQ, and this is how a valuation process is conducted. Appointment is made. Appointment of valuer options. So options include issue up to 6 appointment letters to various registered valuers of different asset classes against different proposals. Alternative 2 is you have 6 appointment letters to registered valuers for different asset classes against combined joint proposals. Then you can always have an appointment letter issued to an RVE or RV who is having registrations of multiple asset classes. So we have RVs, we have individual RVs who are, say, RVs for 2 asset classes, three asset classes. So that's also there. So they're an RVE in themselves. They can take up any assignment. Rule 8.2 talks about responsibility. So this is important to be understood as a registered valuer, because the responsibility does not shift to the next person. So in case you say pick up a valuation for a shares of a company, and then you realize, oh, the shares of the company also holds a land and building for which you want the market price. You approach a land and building valuer. Now you can't shirk your hands off that valuation. You have to keep yourself responsible for that valuation. Then scope of work, compliance with IVS 101 is important. You have to make sure that all these things are part of your scope of work for one, clear communication between the valuer and you. And of course, the other idea is to make sure that basically the documentation is well in place on the expectation from the registered valuer. There are various IBBA orders which talk about appointment of third or valuer. When should that be? When should a third valuer be appointed? Failure to appoint registered valuer within time limit. What happens in that case? So many orders, you can learn from them. Nothing very important. Almost all of them are standard. Valuation under CIP process, of course, one has to compute the fair value and the liquidation value. computed in accordance with internationally accepted valuation standards after physical verification of the inventory and fixed assets of the corporate debtor. Then the valuation report is required to be then shared with the members of the COC after the receipt of the resolution plan, after the RP takes a declaration from the various creditors that they will not share the report and they will keep it confidential. Appointment of registered valuers, again the PPIRP process also is a similar process. The timelines are cut, however, to shorten the overall PPIRP process. I think I'm not sure if all of you are interested in understanding the market value, liquidation value, fair value. I can give it a mix and give you a quick brief. The idea is that these are the basis of value, these are the premise of value, these are the valuation approaches. Now, as a valuer, one needs to take care of all the four rather. One needs to take care of the basis of value, talk about that in the report, premise of value, talk about that, valuation approaches, talk about that, and various methods also. So fair value definition is as if it is a market value definition, but the only difference is that the value has to be as on the CRP date. So you can't provide for any distress in the sale and all that in a market value or in a fair value scenario. And that's the idea here. Liquidation value on the other side is more of a realizable value of the assets. So the idea is to understand that what will you fetch if you liquidate the company on the insolvency commencement date itself. Regulation 32 requires you to do valuations under various modes. So basically, you can sell an asset as a standalone basis, you can sell the asset on a slump sale basis, you can sell them collectively, you can sell them in parcels, you can sell the corporate debtor as a going concern or the business of the corporate debtor as a going concern. So all are, of course, part of this concept. Liquidation process, if there is a valuation that is already done during the CRP process and the liquidator is having an opinion that it can still be used, then of course it can be used. In case the liquidator considers if the valuation was not done at all, then the liquidator has to get it done. That is the kind of concern here. And the idea is again that two registered values will be appointed and they need to take out a value, compute a value, which will be the liquidation value, which will again be used to set up the reserve price for the auction. Physical verification for all assets of the corporate debtor are important. That is compulsory and has to be taken care of. I would say that that's majorly about it. So the valuation strategy factors, so you have to look at whether it is a going concern or not. Then you have to look at assets and their condition. You have to look at location of the assets, sale in tandem. You have to think like a prospective investor, understand where the person who is supposed to invest money into this company or in this asset will derive value from. You have to look at industry, peers and competitors, land and machinery, and so on. When you're doing valuation approaches and when you're doing cost approach or market approach, you have to take care of physical obsolescence, functional obsolescence, and external or economic obsolescence. So you have to take care of these. So one can always have multiple ways of auctioning the same plants. In this case, you will see that the company as a whole is being sold as a going concern. Then there's a biomass power plant which is being sold as a going concern. Then the separate assets are also listed underneath. So the idea and what I wanted to share is that one can always have auctions where all the various methods of auctioning are, being talked about in tandem. Or this is the kind of way it can be done. Voluntary liquidation, the rules are very clear that a valuation is required for the assets of the company. So wherever the assets are there, a voluntary liquidation has to happen. Individual bankruptcy, it is optional in the hands of the bankruptcy trustee. He can get the values, he can get this cleared up. Unique challenges of valuation under IBC, so limited or no access to documents, limited time, compromise or exited game piece. All these things are there. A lot of challenges in IBC assignments, but at the end of it, you have to face the idea that yes, the basically options available, the information available to you under IBC valuations might be lesser, but one then has to take assumptions and close the valuation report and estimate and hope that the valuation is closest to the actual number, because information is what brings clarity to the whole valuation exercise. That's
sir,
the idea.
Sir, this one is limited or no access to documents. Limited or no access to documents. How we can meet out this challenge for valuation purpose?
So you're talking about no access to information. So
or insufficient information or documents.
So you take assumptions and take the assumptions which are most likely, and then some information will be available on physical verification or physical visit to the site. Some information may not be available at that time. So one has no other option but to state the inability of arranging that information and relying on that information in their report, and then close the report.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ji. So that's my presentation. I will stop sharing my screen now. And I think we have a few questions at hand. Mukesh Ji is asking that a new IP, how he should start his profession in practice. So when you talk about a new IP, sir, the challenges for a new IP is getting the first case. And of course, the case is subsequent to that. The challenges of getting the first case have two major problems. One problem is that the financial creditors and other creditors perhaps will always favor an IP who is having some experience than an IP who is having no experience at all. And that's very natural for anyone. So that happens everywhere, that wherever you have, one has, say, if I talk about, say, GST knowledge, if somebody has GST knowledge since the time that in 2007 it was launched and he has now a large experience of many clients, then that person will always be favored over somebody who has just started learning GST. So that edge of having experience in a particular law will always be there. That's there in IP also. I can't say that that can be removed at any stage. Somebody having experience can then maybe play a leadership role, share his knowledge with others, and then that is what you can see and learn, and then have a active mindset to learn more and more about the IP functionalities. The other problem is having infrastructure, because a trained IP who has done a lot of cases might have a strong infrastructure, having some support team to his, where that person might have been trained by that person. In some organizations, maybe article trainees are the trained people who have done some work, or maybe some other assistants in the office. So the idea is to then develop that. And those people perhaps who have done that or who have developed some infrastructure either have been lucky in getting a case from the NCLT directly, or they have been lucky in convincing the banks and telling them that they can do a good job about an insolvency matter. So that is the idea, and the idea is to keep marketing yourself, keep sharing knowledge publicly, so that I think everyone understands that if you have been sharing knowledge, then you know those things. So that really helps.
So Ankit, one question.
Yes, Ravindra ji.
From my side. Namaskar. This is R.K. Goel.
Yes, Ravindra ji.
कैसे हो, ठीक हो?
All well, sir.
Yeah, great. I am an ex-banker.
Right, sir.
I think you are from AAA, na?
Yes, sir. I'm from AAA.
Oh,
sir.
Great. So I have been associated with AAA since 2007, when I was Chief Manager in Abu Dhabi Meerut, Bank of Baroda.
Oh, wow, sir. Wow. So that's an old association.
So I know your father very well. So thank
sir.
you that we are getting connected. Then one question that I was going through your discussion and reply and question reply. See, my observation is that the recently that IBBI has also come with a new code that any RP keeping a limit, keeping a threshold limit of 10 accounts per RP. And that was in July or August. That was the new code enacted by the IBBI. Not more than 3 accounts per above 1,000 and overall 10 accounts per IP per RP as a liquidator or the RP, whatever may be. So see, we do have all around 3,500 and active are 2,700 RPs. Yeah. So my opinion in that case, everybody should get a chance to prove his proficiency ability. Not like that कि भाई जब तक किसी को चांस नहीं मिलेगा तो वो कैसे अपने प्रोफेशनल एबिलिटी को प्रूव कर पाएगा. So my opinion is different in this. We should be given the chance. For that, certainly this is not a proper forum to discuss. But the question is that how IBBI and all that, the monitoring agency is ensuring that the implementation of this no code of this recent code of the IBBI, in which it states that threshold limit of the 10 cases, and that. See, the NCLT does not have any detail how many cases that RP is handling. So NCLT will give the order. ठीक है ना? And तो ये आप जरा मुझे थोड़ा सा इसमें बताएंगे.
Sir, I believe IBBI has the statistics on the number of cases that any insolvency professional is handling, and all these then limitations are enforced voluntarily. And if I'm not wrong, if this limit is imposed, then that limit is imposed. Then there is no way somebody will think about not honoring that limit. Number one. Number two, with respect to your opinion on everyone should get a chance, I believe the NCLT, the panel that is formed for NCLT automated cases to come to anyone, is giving a fair chance to everyone, number one. Number two, the market is fair. The market will reward that person who can show and who can show knowledge on the subject. And that choice is always available with the bankers. You have been a banker yourself, and I would assume that you are very well aware of how bankers actively keep giving chances to various professionals that they meet, and that is what we have also experienced, that it is never limited, and that person who does good work always gets more work. We see that in day-to-day life also, and for insolvency professionals also that is true.
No, but see, that is again. I will just again discuss a few things. NCLT does not have the detail that person is having the 10 cases. Then how? So see, it is to be implemented. It is to be implemented in rightness. When the IBBI has enacted some code, so it is not being implemented. What I see, even the people who are having 15 cases, even they are getting the new cases. So where the new persons will get? This is a question.
So I think that has to be it has to be complaint filed with the IBBI if it comes to your knowledge that some IP has taken a case beyond 10 cases, 10 assignments in their name. Then you can always.
नहीं सर, नहीं ऐसा नहीं है सर. देखिए क्या है, complaints वगैरह से नहीं सर. It should be automatically implemented. It should be automatically implemented in a right earnest. When some direction, some code has been launched, it should be implemented in right spirit. So I put a question to this the IIP chairperson, Mr. Madan also. So he told some code of ethics and like that is coming with a, but I think it is quite a long time. And you also hold a good position in that IIP and all that, and the IBB also. So this is my request. This is not a complaint actually, but this is my request that it should be implemented in the right earnest.
So IBBI, in my knowledge, takes complaints very seriously. So in case somebody has flouted the
I don't believe in these complaints. See, I don't believe in all these complaints and all that.
Then there is no solution to the problem.
As regards me, there is no question. But my question is that
So
Everybody should
the IBBI works on feedback from the market. In case there is a law that is being broken, then somebody should bring it to the knowledge of IBBI, maybe by a simple email, and the IBBI can look into it.
Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Hello, Ankit ji. Now the second banker coming.
Right, sir.
Actually, just a few line on market value and fair value difference. Then whether the ESG is now incorporated in the valuation reports. And next is about disclaimers and caveats. A few introductory, some clarity if you want to give. And what is the latest status on accountability and standardization by, you can say, valuers? Any new circular has come from the MCA?
So I will deal all the questions one by one. In case I miss any question, then let me know.
Okay.
Number one, fair value versus liquidation value. Fair value is a definition closer to the market value. Market value is defined in a way where it says that one has to have an arm's length dealing. One has to ensure that the amount or the transaction is happening in the market. Now, when we say in the market, we mean that there is no extreme pressure on the buyer to buy or an extreme pressure for the seller to sell. And there's no urgency to sell. There is no requirement that something is losing value, let's sell it immediately. So you're looking at a market, and then you're looking at the market frame. So in case I say that, okay, I want to sell my phone. I have a Apple phone, I want to sell it. What is the estimated time that you feel will be required for me to sell it in an ideal circumstance?
And the fair one you were telling?
No, I'm saying what will be the ideal, what is the ideal time that it will take for me to sell that asset? Maybe a week's time, maybe 3 days, 4 days.
Fair value means
what is
ideal
the best
time. Okay.
What is the best? No, that's not the meaning. I'm just discussing that what is the difference. So the difference is that, say, for a mobile phone, the average sale price or the proper marketing time to give it proper exposure to the market is understood to be, say, a week's time. Now, at the same time, if I talk about an immovable property, let's say we talk about a land and building or a residential house. In that case, if I say that a week's time I'll be able to sell that property, you will say you are joking now. Because in that case, because of the transaction size, because of the asset quality, the exposure time required might be a month's time, maybe 2 months, maybe 3 months, maybe 4 months. It will depend on what kind of asset you're looking at. So the ideal is that in a market value scenario, you're looking at exposing the asset to the market in that for that ideal time, and then spending the adequate effort and money which you would ideally spend in marketing that asset. So in case I talk about a mobile phone, nobody expects me to advertise the sale of a mobile phone in a newspaper, right? Nobody does that. Nobody does that. So the idea is that, okay, I'll put it on OLX and maybe, somebody will buy it and all that. So those are the modes that maybe, are popular today. But in case I talk about a property, then maybe putting it on a classified ad is something that a person will do because the cost of putting that advertisement is a fraction of the value of the property. So maybe then I will advertise it and give it proper exposure on various online sites. So the idea is that proper marketing exposure, proper knowledge about the asset, proper communication on the rights and the advantages that the buyer will get from the acquisition of that asset, proper marketing time. All these are core to the idea that the asset will find the right value in the market. And the liquidation value, what happens is that, so first of all, you bring in the concept of as is where is basis. What is as is where is basis? One example that I give is that, say you have a car. That car is not working. It has not been serviced for the last 6 months. In an ideal scenario, somebody will not try to sell that car in that condition. Somebody will say, okay, let me check what is the cost of repairing this car so that it will at least run. I can at least give a test drive to the person who wants to come and buy this car, because that will increase my number of customers for that car. So one will say, spend 1,000 rupees, 2,000 rupees, 10,000 rupees, repair that car, make it drivable condition, and then try to sell it. But on an as is where is basis, you might come and you might want to then buy the car for on an as is where is basis, where you are simply saying that, okay, the car does not work. So in that case, on an as is where is basis, there is a extreme risk that either the customer, the number of participants in the market decrease, or on an as is where is basis, the uncertainty about the realization of that money or realization or resale of that asset or usage of that asset increases. So that uncertainty on an as-is where-is basis sale is there in the liquidation value process, number one. Then you look at the constraints of the seller. So in case the seller is time bound, he's time bound, and in a liquidation process, we are all saying that it is time bound. We have to hurry up, that okay, we need to sell this asset quickly. The bank is also wanting to sell the asset quickly because they have an interest on the money that they're supposed to get. If they get the same money after 1 year as compared to today, that they have lost 12% or maybe 11%, maybe 6% over that money that they have got after 1 year. So there's an urgency to sell. So one, there is less time. Number two, there might also be constraints with respect to how much advertising cost or how much advertising money can you spend on that advertisement. So in case you say, okay, I only have money, I only have the power to bring out a public announcement. That public announcement also will be published only in Delhi NCR region because the company is registered in Delhi. Nobody else will come to know about this property for sale. That is one condition. The other condition can be, you have some budget approved from the SCC, from the COC, or you are willing to spend some effort and money on advertising the company on the various online websites, and then get a better response on the property value or the property sale, better prospects. So that's the other option. So these are the differentiations between market value and liquidation value. Now, if you look at the standards also in IVS also, you will find that the extent of these factors affecting the value will differentiate from asset to asset. And that is where the play comes in, that somebody says, only I will reduce 10% from the liquidation, from the fair value to come to liquidation value. Somebody says, I will reduce 25%. So maybe neither of them are wrong, but they need to tell why 10% and why 25% after talking about all these factors that I just talked about. So this is the market value versus liquidation value concept. What was the second question, sir?
Incorporation of ESG.
So ESG factors are still under discussion even at the IVSC stage. And my thought process is that ESG factors are something perhaps we always, subconsciously anyways make part of our valuations, because we are always looking at environmental sustainability, social sustainability, governance factors. We're already looking at those factors in some way or the other. But specifically,
it is given in pricing, maybe like that, but no mention is there in the, you can say, evaluation reports.
There is no mention. There is no requirement for a mention right now, because the ESG framework is even if you talk about IVS does not contain any ESG requirement or any ESG exposure requirement or an ESG disclosure requirement. ESG is also under discussion at IVSC stage also. So the time when it will be made part of standards, you can say that it has to be part of a valuation report. Till then, it is optional. Somebody can put it in, somebody cannot put it in.
Okay, because it can extremely affect the valuation process.
It can, but rarely does it affect the valuation process. Now, in case we're talking about some companies, today, if I talk about environmental factors, the only companies I feel are impacted by ESG factors or environmental factors per se in India are coal-based industry. That is the only environmental impact practically that I am seeing, that I'm foreseeing will happen. Even oil-based companies are out of the whole framework in the recent global summit on climate. They just got an easy escape out, and everyone is talking about using the oil profits to make renewable energy, and that is how their businesses will transition over time. So maybe we can't even predict what will happen in 5 years' time. Maybe in 5 years' time, every car that we see on Delhi roads will be electric. Maybe not. Let's see how things shape up.
Yes.
You had some more questions which I'm forgetting.
Latest guidelines? Any new circular has come on the accountability and standardization
of the valuation CLD was the last circular. The latest change is the changes in IVS that have been that are supposed to be effective from 31st July. IVS has a system of having an annual change upgradation of the IVS. So they have a lot of discussion papers, and then they finally come out with a revised version, which they give a lot of time for people to go through and make part of the reports. In the latest framework that they have come out with, they have introduced a new IVS for inventories. That is one big change in that. They have introduced some other changes also, but the impact is not very major. We can always have a separate session, maybe a short half an hour, 45-minute session to understand the changes in IVS. I have taken a few sessions on that with various other RVOs. We can always have that session again. But then one can always read through the IVS version, which is available in a track changes mode. So in that case, what they have done is they have highlighted every single para that they have introduced in the IVS. So it's a very, very easy read that one can do for themselves also.
But as far as accountability part is concerned, IPs are, you can say, very much governed, but valuers are not, you can say, asked any question during the CIRP process if there are something fishy or something negative. All
Registered
things, all
valuers,
responsibility, all things comes to IP only. No?
All things come to IPs and then IBC process, because the IP is the center of the whole process.
But RV is also registered with IBBI. He is also at the equal footing.
It's okay, but then see, the RV can be punished by IBBI in case he has given a wrong report, in case he has not completed the report based on IVS. And I believe we are still adjusting to the fact that the various IVSs are still being absorbed by our registered valuers. Maybe beyond that, even the CLD circular is being absorbed by many people. That's still something that many people miss out on, certain aspects of that circular to be made part of the reports. So I think we are still transitioning into a new era where we are supposed to have reports which are following a specific standard. And that will happen slowly, steadily. Number two, there is always this uncertainty, I think, at IBBI level also, because they have done, Dr. Sahu at his end did such a great work on trying to, give a committee of experts report, design the draft valuation bill and draft valuer bill. And all that work has been done by him. But then, of course, the government is yet to act on setting up a full-fledged National Institute of Valuers. Let's see when that comes up. At that point in time, that should be a regulator who is more acquainted and more understands the standards better. We might have customized standards for our country. We might have more clear standards or more clear report standards that we want everyone to follow. Today, yes, there is a good mix of good reports, bad reports, and I think the discipline will come only with much more and well enforced structure. So of course the regulator enforcing all the IVSs is key to that. So let's hope that starts happening soon.
Okay, so nice. And one more thing, what do you suggest for you can say to RPs to scan through the disclaimer and caveats? How long it will go, and what should not be given in this, or what should be given in this? What IP should check in it?
IP should ensure that there is a very small para of about 6 items listed in the circular on guidelines on caveats and limitations in valuation reports. Those 6 items, of course, should not be part of any valuation report. If they are, then that would be gross negligence on part of the valuer. That should not be there. The second thing that is important is that when the insolvency professional goes through a valuation report, he should ensure that all the assumptions that are made by the valuer are in line with the RP's own understanding of the various documents and information available. If at any point in time there seems to be an assumption which is contradictory to the actual facts or to the actual documents available with the RP, then it should be changed. So for an example, if the RV is taking an assumption that the land is disputed, and the RP believes that the land is not disputed, and the land in the long run will be, the disputes will be resolved when the insolvency process is finished, then the RP should bring that to the attention of the RV, and the RV should then correct that in the report. Because these are the points, or these facts, or rather wrong facts recorded in the reports, is what can also be challenged by a aggrieved promoter or an aggrieved creditor or an aggrieved resolution applicant, and the whole process can go for a toss.
Yeah. Sometimes there are dispute that my furnace is costing about 12 lakhs, but valuer is giving only 2 lakhs. How to resolve that? And CD also there, of course, he is suspended one.
So you're saying the value is different?
Valuation.
So if the valuation is different, the valuation has to be computed through a mechanism. If the valuer believes that the rate of land at a particular area is say 32,000 rupees a square meter, then you have to tell him, give him numbers of the brokers that you have tried to approach, and tell him that, you know, we call these people, they are not even ready to offer 10,000 rupees. You're giving me 32,000 rupees rate. Or you ask him for his reference to 32,000 as a price. So maybe that person can give you 2-3 brokers who are willing to give you or give you a customer for 32,000 rupees. Then you will be able to merge your thought process with the valuer's process. Ultimately, it is all market surveyed rates.
Oh,
so whenever an IP asks us that why have you given this value, we very openly share the broker's name, number, and share with it the RP. We also ask him for numbers or other documents or evidences where we can change the rate based on that feedback. So we keep it very open that way.
Now IP want that valuer should also come to the COC and explain the things himself instead of...
we have done that plenty of times, but we do that at the appropriate time. It is not wrong for the registered valuer to explain it to the COC, the valuation report. But it should not be an exercise which is conducted on a draft report. It should be an exercise which is conducted on once the report is final. So the final report, the COC has the right to call the RV and have an understanding of the valuation report from the RV. But it can't be a negotiation exercise that, oh, you have given this value, this should not be the value. And there are various past records or IBBI disciplinary action orders which discourage that.
Good idea. So nice of you. Thanks for your time. Taken most of the time.
So I think we question. Yes. Please, Vishalji.
What are the challenges the newly appointed IP will face? So,
many challenges. I think the first challenge is to find a market for his services. The second challenge will be to have confidence on the various applications of the law. What we have understood is that every case is a different bucket. Every case has a different solution. Every case is having a different problem. So the RP learns through his past experience as a professional, as a management expert. Because as an RP, all your skills are put to test. You become an advocate also. You become a manager also. A top level management guru. You have to be able to understand and manage the active operations of the company. Then you have to manage your team. You have to manage the law. You have to manage the regulator. So I think it's of course it's a rewarding profession still as compared to what we are doing, but at the same time it does involve a lot of responsibility, a lot of work. So I would say the idea is to keep learning from other experienced IPs, their experiences, keep looking at various today I very easily say that if somebody wants to learn something, all he needs to do is go to YouTube and search for it, and he will find an answer to it. So somebody wants to learn valuation, he sees 4-5 videos, he will become half a valuer. Somebody wants to become somebody wants to make a dish for their children, a food dish for their children. He's never done any cooking in his life. He can make it today with some effort. So that's the effort that is required.
Thank you, Ankit. Thank you very well. Any question more?
Mukesh ji has a question, but I don't have any answer to it. I think in any profession, even in case Mukesh ji, we talk about CAs. There are CAs who have lots of work. There are CAs who don't have lots of work. So it will always be a mixed bag between professionals. And I hope that what I can hope is that those IPs, those insolvency professionals who have good expertise should get the relevant opportunities as time goes. And the number of cases is supposed to remain this only. I don't think we can expect the number of cases in a month to increase beyond 50 that we have, 40 to 50. That will be difficult because what IBC has also done is IBC has decreased the overall debt appetite for various large companies because nobody wants to risk losing their own company for the sake of having that debt. So many companies we know, I think all of you can give more examples than me, where people have cut down their debt and reduced their debt drastically just to escape any chances of an IBC action. So I think that's how perhaps it will be. So thank you, Vishalji. Thank you, Praveenji.
Thank you, Ankit.
Thank you, everyone, for participating in this
Thank you, Jit.
session.
Thank you. So nice of you. Wonderful presentation.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you, Ankit, for giving the wonderful presentation and explain everything so personally. And I thanks to all participants for doing the active participation. Praveen sir, please tell the vote of thanks. प्रवीण साहब का माइक ऑफ है.
Right. Good evening, everyone. I think profession of valuation and insolvency profession both are equally opportunity for our professionals. Their future are very bright for both profession. I think so. And with this, I thanks to Sri Ankit Goyalji, who teach us very nicely and elaborately, and our Vishalji and all the participants. Once again, I thank you to all of them. And wants to be associated further for in our future webinars. Always, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Ji. Thank you, Praveen Ji. It was my pleasure. This is one of the, this is how I think anyone learns. So this is my interest in having these kind of webinars. It was my pleasure to be here. Thank you, everyone, for making this so interactive.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you.
Very, very much.
Thanks a lot, Ankit, for a wonderful presentation, sir.